9:30 on the West Coast. This is how you get started. You go directly into a wine tasting, no breakfast, all gas, no breaks.
I don't usually drink at 10:30 in the morning local time. So today the Malbec was my favorite. We're all drinking kind of midday right now.
Yeah. You just heard it from the man himself. You can day drink on this stuff and be good for the night.
Encourage it, actually.
And there's just so much that goes into your day-to-day business.
You want to find wine that you like, but you can make wine taste better by being happy with your friends.
We don't want to make this a top-down, hey, I have 100 Bitcoin, I'm going to speak down to you on how you do your personal finances. We're going to do more bottom-up. We want the community out there talking about good decisions, bad decisions, and how we can, get better and preserve value going forward.
Okay, a millionaire. I'm a young money millionaire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Daily Stack. You are due for a treat today. We are talking Bitcoin. We are talking wine, entrepreneurship, and we are going to have a live wine tasting, the first ever Bitcoin wine tasting on a live stream with the man himself, Ben Justman. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. How are we doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Love the energy. Excited to drink some wine at 10:30 on a Friday morning, get the weekend started right, and pumped to be here with you guys.
Cheers. Jody, how you doing?
We're doing good. We're it's 9:30 on the West Coast. We're coming off a dry month. So this is how you get started. You go directly into a wine tasting, no breakfast, all gas, no breaks. We're excited to see you.
I love it.
And Avi.
I'm here.
We're live.
In living color.
Yes.
This is fun. I'm excited. I can never turn down an opportunity to have wine with boys and watching Bitcoin and talking Bitcoin. So pumped up. Let's do it.
Amazing. So before we get started, I think it's good for Ben, introduce yourself. You are the Bitcoin wine guy. How did you get that title? How did you get started doing wine itself?
Yeah. Hey. Thanks for having me on once again. I am Ben, and I started making wine in 2019 and kind of took over what my dad's hobby was, he planted a vineyard about 22 years ago at this point, and started making wine because he grew all his own food and was just kind of that kind of guy that got stuff done. And he got some great feedback from his wine over the years. And so when I was like 25, I was looking for a business to start, and that was sitting there for me to take over a hobby and scale up. And with a little proof of work over the years that it was good wine from a good vineyard. And I figured I could just, if my dad taught himself how to make wine, I could do the same and he could teach me. But as soon as I started, I realized that he had no idea what he was doing, which there was a bit of, oh shit. But at the same time, if he was able to make really good wine from our vineyard and had no idea what he was doing, surely I could figure it out. So starting from that base, I just taught myself, learned from a bunch of winemakers in the area, and went for it as the first business I ever started. And lots of bumps and bruises along the way. The learning curve is steep. And my first year, I definitely messed up some wine, but sold out of what I had and continued going forward there, selling at farmers markets and ski towns around me. And in that time, I was kind of getting going. I was building a house with my dad and really deep in that proof of work energy, and found Bitcoin from the guy I was living with was a Bitcoiner, and dove deep down that rabbit hole, and then found Twitter. And so found the Bitcoin community and was just really excited to have people that didn't think I was absolutely insane in my life and wanted to talk about Bitcoin. So I just, joined it, started posting, and Bitcoiners started asking like, oh, you make wine? Can I buy it with Bitcoin? And here I am trying to stack. And of course, yeah, I mean, it's a sale, but it's also a sale in Bitcoin. So it kind of just developed naturally. I got on Twitter to make friends and meet people who didn't think I was insane, and ended up moving my entire business that way. It's been a natural transition to be. I'm not Bitcoin only. I mean, I'm as far as crypto goes, I'm not messing with crypto, but Bitcoiner dollars and Bitcoiners really is Bitcoiners only is all I say. And it's not like I'm not turning down other people, but I'm just like not really interested in entering the typical wine world, the distribution game, the massive scale up it would take to change. I'm happy to make wine from my vineyard and keep it small, super high quality. And the cool part is that like the Bitcoin community is small but big and spread out, and very motivated to support the world that they want to live in and their own. And it's kind of this like hyper focused and broad buy local campaign, like buy Bitcoiner made, or from Bitcoin companies or from ethical companies. I think Bitcoiners relate to that a lot, that voting with your money has a lot of power. And so it's really cool to be a provider in that community. Like I could feel that if I was the provider of wine in my town. There's 10 other wineries here, and that's fine. But like I feel that sense of community and that sense of belonging and value within the community, even though it's very spread out, and not as much face to face. I mean, I do meet a ton of Bitcoiners over the years, but it kind of allows me to have that values-based production and real sense of like I'm providing good to the world in more of a way than I would get by just like running a business and trying to make money. There's this extra layer of providing for my community that really gives me a lot of joy.
One piece I'll say, you were on the podcast last fall, and we had a great time, but we weren't tasting wine. We were actually reached out to you because you had put out, I think, a great post on taking Bitcoin loans out at the top. And I think too many people out there, retail investors that were burned by NACA, all the treasury companies, they're not all bad, but some retail got burned by buying the top, as well as others that are getting mogged on by saying, wait, you didn't sell it 126K. Like you didn't think it was going to, you really thought it was going to 1 million. And I think it's totally unfair. What people represent on the timeline, on Twitter, on any social media is usually not factually correct. So I really appreciated, you were very authentic, and you said, look, I bought the top, I took out loans. It was stressful. I really encourage people to be very conservative in like how they handle their money, not to sell, don't make financial decisions that put your Bitcoin at risk. It's a long-term game. So that was an amazing way to start. This one's a little more fun, but I had to give you credit for that. And I feel like just having authentic voices out there talking about like Bitcoin personal finance is something we love. And we need to have more of that, because there's too many guys that are talking about their bags and how well they're doing and timing the market when a lot of it's just not real, and people need to know that.
Yeah. I mean, my orientation is, we all put up fronts and everything, but my orientation is always to search for the real and the truthful and the authentic. And I think that's part of the reason that I turned my business this direction, is that I find a lot more authenticity in Bitcoiners, Bitcoin community. And there's, as you were saying, like we all put up fronts. There's always fake. There's people throwing up their bags. There's traders and, all different things. But I find a lot of great people here. Whereas in the wine world, and I think it's kind of the same in the general crypto world, is a lot of flexing and games and just trying to look cool. And not just like, I'm sure I do some of it, but I don't really care about it at the base layer. To reference what you're saying, when I figured out Bitcoin, it was like kind of right before the 2021 pump. And so I figured it out and kind of had my, oh shit, that's what this is. This is going to infinity. And it was right in the middle of, going up 6x, which is just kind of unfortunate timing I'd gotten into personal finance, but I was very much did not know anything about trading or investing. It was my personal finance journey was like, you're retarded, buy index funds. And I was cool with that. And then I found Bitcoin. And so, I bought the top heavy with my Roth IRA, just withdrew all that, took the hit, bought Bitcoin. The first top went down. I was like, this is the best thing in my life. 50% discount. Oh, I have time. And then it went up again. And I was like, oh, we're going to 100K, whatever. And then took out a loan. And then we went down 80%. It wasn't a loan on my Bitcoin. So that was great. But it was definitely, I was all in twice, overall in the second time. And an 80% drawdown messed me up because I was all in and starting a business as well. So, everything was tied up and it was just kind of survival, but stacked along the way. And lo and behold, I did sell the top this year because I planned on I plan on that. I was 4 years out. This 2025 is going to be the peak of the cycle, and I planned on it. And I was really pissed that I sold the top because I thought we should be higher than we were. It was like 110 or 115 or something. And then I don't know. I don't remember the exact timeline, but then I got impatient again and I took out another Bitcoin loan and bought the top after I sold the top with leverage. And I'm fine. I did it in a responsible way. It's still obviously a major bummer. And I mean, it just kind of goes to show is like, yeah, you learned your lesson, dude. You're not going to mess up again. And then you learn it again. And I love touching the stove, apparently. So it doesn't feel nearly as bad this time. I mean, it's, we're at 60K now. Like, I guess if we dropped to 16K, I would be feeling pretty bad. But it's like I did it with the plan if I could survive down to whatever number and be fine. And it doesn't really, I don't really brag about selling the top because I hated it in the moment and then I made a bad decision afterwards. But I don't know, I'll end up with a little bit more Bitcoin, but I could have ended up with a lot more Bitcoin if I had timed that correctly or something. And reminds me to make a plan, stick to it, and don't get cute again. But the game of Bitcoin is survival. The game of wine is long-term survival. The game of business a lot of times is long-term survival. So I don't know. I like to touch the stove. I take risks. I'm a big skier and was always like most at home, being on the edge of being out of control. So I don't know. It's not something that really affects me too much. It probably does, but it's I don't know. I don't take financial advice from me, I guess. Outside of like, I'm going to give the super conservative advice and probably not do that on my own.
You're not alone. Jody told me to go in at 19K, and I waited till about 110K, I think, to move over some as well. So I appreciate the honesty. How do you recover? Like mentally, and I saw a tweet of yours too, where, a freeze came over, killed a lot of your crops. How do you personally like recover? I don't know if your dad has taught you anything that's been instilled in your mind, but like, is there, mentally, how do you get through that and say, okay, the sun's going to come up again tomorrow, the wind upon my back, let's go.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an instant thing. That was the 22 bear market was like, I had bad stuff happen from all angles of my life. Like, I don't really want to get into it, but just everything was hitting the fan and in the wrong way. And just kind of knew like, look, life's fine. If this is everything bad's happening, like if this is as bad as it gets, like I'll survive. I'll, improve one little thing. I think the number one habit I have for getting through things is I picked up journaling about 12 years ago, and not quite every night, but most nights I'd go to bed and I just kind of brain dump, talk about whatever's going on in the world. And it helps me like not worry, reset, make a plan for improving things. But also, I guess I got to give credit to my mom. She always instilled a super positive, like, you can do anything. You can get through it, and you're going to be fine attitude. But I guess the third thing that comes to my mind is after college, I moved to Vietnam and taught English, and felt like I was living like a king at 22, saving more money than I had at any point at that time, and like eating out every day, and like, life's good. And I remember distinctly thinking at that time that was my rock bottom. And I say that in a super positive light, that I was like, whatever bad happens to me, I can always move back here and do this and I will be fine. So my rock bottom is pretty high.
I had a similar story. When I was 25, I quit my job, traveled to Vietnam actually as well. I was in Thailand. I was on a beach and I was like, why does everyone work so hard? Like, I barely need to work that hard. And I can just live where everyone strives to ultimately get to. I'm here right now. But it is one of those things where you sometimes need to leave and like literally get out of the same location, leave some of your friends and kind of put yourself in a different place. And it does help with the reset. I completely agree.
Yeah, at that time, I definitely got bored and kind of I read a book on central banking and I read a book on entrepreneurship that I guess set me up to be a Bitcoin entrepreneur, both those things. So, I don't know. I definitely had that same feeling. I was like, sometimes I'm like, why am I working so hard? I feel like I could just like play the location game and go live somewhere else. But at the same time, I live next to my parents. I live on the property I grew up on. I live in a house that I built with my dad, and I want to raise kids here. So all trade-offs there.
American dream. Let's crack this wine.
Yeah, well, first let's do a quick word from our sponsor, our good friends, Rhino. Rhino Bitcoin is doing something completely different by combining multiple different financial services all in one app. Rhino is the next generation Bitcoin banking app designed to handle all your Bitcoin needs in one place. Here's what you can do. Buy Bitcoin with some of the lowest fees anywhere, more sats for every dollar. Make payments over the Lightning Network, send instantly, near zero fees. Send cash globally, easy and fast. You got friends or family, any country in the world, get them the cash they need. And of course, you can set up your DCA with automatic savings. So you stack sats on your schedule and build wealth on your time. And this is just the beginning. Soon, Rhino will let you pay bills, direct deposit, borrow against your Bitcoin, and even save for retirement, all seamlessly inside the app. And of course, security is a top priority. We're talking biometric verification, 24/7 fraud protection, and the confidence of knowing your Bitcoin is never rehypothecated. And if you have Casa as a multi-sig, you can use Rhino as one of your keys. So go today to rhinobitcoin.com or just tap the link below and use the code Bitcoin News, one word, Bitcoin News, and you'll get $10 of free Bitcoin in your account just for getting started. Rhino's a great team, good friends. Hit them up on their Twitter page. More than happy to answer any questions you got. And that's where we get our Bitcoin and where you should too. So, Ben, let's get started.
Yeah, let's taste some wine. So let's start with my estate Pinot Noir. This is what I grow in Western Colorado. Myself, my dad planted this vineyard in 2004. And it's, like I said, it's been doing really well over the years. I grew up farming it. I grew up in the vineyard for my summer job. Hated it because my dad made me do it, and you rebel at a certain point in your teens. But anyways, this first taste is going to be, depending on what you had in your mouth, is not always representative of how it actually tastes. So kind of take that in mind. Maybe give it a second sip before we talk about the flavor.
Should we smell it? What are we smelling for?
I guess to say it simply, twirl your glass like you're doing the great job, Avi.
I just saw it on TV once. I don't know. Exactly.
Yeah, dude, you got it. It just volatilizes it and gets the aromas out a little bit more into the glass, so yeah, you can smell it a little bit better.
Nice.
Again, you guys just opened those bottles, so it takes a little time to really open up and fully express the flavor. Definitely would recommend decanting. But these grapes are grown in a alluvial soil. So the soil really affects the flavor of the wine, the size of the wine, the structure. And alluvial soils are going to produce a little bit lighter of a wine. And so Pinot is a pretty delicate grape, and I find a lot of Pinots in the United States are grown and made to be very big. They're made to be more powerful, and I guess that's kind of like just this American quality. The American wine drinker wants that, and I've read that, going back since I was first learning wine, is the American wine drinker wants to be punched in the face with flavor, typically. And so a lot of Pinots in the United States are made, I think, for cab drinkers, and cab drinkers. I love Cab Sauv. That was the first wine that I ever felt like outside of Pinot that I really enjoyed. And it's a great wine. But there's a lot of Cab Sauv made in the United States that is made to taste a specific way. California cabs, while they have and I'm being very specific by saying California cabs. Each little niche is different, but there's a huge influx of wines that are all kind of meant to taste like a California cab should. And that's through manipulation, that's through additives, all kinds of different stuff. The farming, you can just do different farming practices to do that. And it's just kind of to say that there's a lot of wines that taste the same out there. And when you go into these small regions like I'm in, and farmers that produce a little bit more low intervention, you're going to get more unique flavors. So this is, like I said, lighter bodied. It's somewhat tart.
Very good.
Dry cherry. And what do you guys taste?
Hungarian oak.
There we go. Did you steal that from my
I actually
Twitter?
looked that up. Yeah, I looked that up. I was waiting for the moment to drop that. Well, I'd like to hear, like a little bit about that and just how some of the wines are produced. Just because I don't think the average person out there, they're grabbing whatever's on the shelf for $12, and they're not really thinking about it. And just, with the different barrels, how that affects the taste and everything.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just go into my process and then can kind of bring up some different stuff that people do. So just like zooming out, what do I do physically to make wine? So the grapes ripen, I harvest them, and then I put them through a machine called a crusher destemmer. And that, like, I set it so it doesn't break up the grapes too much. So there's some whole grapes and some broken up grapes. So there's a bit of juice around, and then all the stems get sent out the end. So I put all the stems in the chicken coop to feed those chickens. And if I had a bunch of stems in there, it would the wine you would know it would taste kind of green is the way to put it. It's a little bit more like vegetal. Tannins would be super strong, bitter. So that all goes out, and then I have a vat of grapes, grape juice, crushed up grapes, and that ferments for 2 weeks. And so I do a spontaneous fermentation, and that's the yeast from my vineyard is fermenting the grapes. So yeast lives everywhere. We've over the years found that we have a yeast strain in the vineyard that ferments the wine really nicely and makes great wine. If you don't have that, you can get vinegar. I wouldn't have tried this if my dad had not started doing it like 15 years ago. And so that ferments for about 2 weeks. And then in 2 weeks, you have wine, but you also want the wine is within all this grape mashed up grapes and everything. And so I put the wine in my wine press, and that runs. I used to have a wine press that you had to physically crank, but I sold the top of this cycle to buy a hydraulic one. So I just plug it in, it presses, and I press the wine into the barrel. And then once it's in the barrel, my like 2 week run of I'm doing something to it every day, because when it's fermenting, I'm punching it down, mixing it up. And once it's in the barrel, I touch it about every 6 weeks. So I taste it, I add wine to it, and I add oak to it. So I use neutral barrels, and that's because I'm making a pretty light wine, and I don't really have an insane amount of volume to bring in new oak barrels that really, like, there's just a lot of oak flavor in new oak barrels. And so I just add like a little bit of oak cubes to it in order to more fine tune the amount of oak that I want in each barrel. And so I top it off, I add oak if it needs it. And then about a year later, I need those barrels to then put more new wine into it. So I mix all the barrels together, because everything tastes slightly different in each barrel. And create this cohesive flavor, and then bottle it. And then that bottle sits in my cellar for a year-ish before I start selling it, kind of depending on stock. But that's the turnover. And when you're in the process where you are tasting every 6 weeks, you can do it less, you can do it more. There's a lot of additives that you can use to manipulate the flavor within that. And so that's where that homogeny of flavor comes is most winemakers, you go to school for winemaking. What I do is crazy to just like pick it up. But you're trained in all these ways that if you add this, it changes it in this way, and you want this exact balance, and you have a chemistry lab, and there's absolutely a place for that. Like wine is an art and a science, and I lean very hard in the art direction. And some people like more sciencey wine. Some people like more weird arty wine. Not to say mine's weird, but it's this whole game of like me saying that, oh, it's all homogenized or whatever. It's like, okay, great. If you love that flavor that it's all homogenized towards, like, that's awesome for you. But when you go drinking a bunch of different wines and you're kind of looking for more variety in flavor, because you drink a lot of wines, and you're trying to, it's like you're guided by your taste, then it's just a little boring of an experiment, I guess. And it's a little boring of an explanation or an exploration. So I tend to appreciate the differences between each year. They're not that big. I mean, it's the same vineyard. There's slight changes based off when I pick and how the growing season was, and I guess my winemaking within it. But I don't know. It's a fun journey to see what's going on every year. And in the vineyard is it's where I farm is kind of on the edge of where it's possible to farm. When you go, my town is known for, it was known first for peonies, and then for just growing in general. And for a long time, there was a huge like stone fruit tree fruit scene. So they would load up the trains with fruit and send them out. And that was the big business of my town. But just like a tiny bit further down valley of my farm, there's no fruit trees, because the way the wind blows through the valley, you can't get a viable crop because you get spring freezes. It's a little bit less of an issue for grapes. We don't have to worry about the spring, but we are dealing with heavy frosts typically or occasionally. And once every 10 years, we lose the entire vineyard and it has to come back up from the rootstock. So it's not like the easiest place to farm in that sense. That said, when most years Pinot just is perfectly suited, it comes out, it starts growing really at the right time in the spring. So we don't deal with spring frost, and then we harvest right before it freezes. And that's like literally just enough time almost all the years. We have these hard frosts sometimes that screw us up, and we've had a couple other things go wrong. They're a little bit more random, but the benefit of that is I live in a high desert climate. And so I'm not having to spray pesticides or herbicides in the sense that a lot of other vineyards in especially more humid places have to do to be able to save their crop. I don't have the bugs. I don't have the fungus. I don't have any of the other weird diseases or anything that comes up. And that's a huge benefit. So it's like there's negative to farming at high altitude. And there's also just everywhere you farm is going to taste slightly differently. But the benefits are massive in the sense that I can farm a lot more close to the land, or like more regenerative, a lot easier.
So Ben, on your career, real quick, I think it's fascinating, and we'll tie it into Bitcoin. Is you mentioned you weren't, because your dad was making you do it, you weren't like as interested, and you like hated working at the winery. You worked in Vietnam, and then now you're back in it and you're passionate about it. We've seen Elon Musk talk about data centers in space and the proliferation of AI, making everything abundant. Potentially we need UBI because it's replacing a lot of jobs. And we see this with SaaS companies. So many of them have taken a hit because they're like, AI can just create software super easily. What's not easy to create is Bitcoin. There's only 21 million of them. Wine growing regions. I feel like you can't grow on Mars for a very long time unless we figure that out. The moon, you can't grow there. So like Elon doesn't have a plan for a winemaking region. You're in an industry that is born around scarcity. There's only a few of these like winemaking regions based on like the type of soil, the climate, et cetera. It seems like it's very selective on how to be successful. Is that like coincidence, or do you feel like you were driven to Bitcoin because you love like long-term thinking and scarcity, and then it happens also that winemaking is very similar ethos?
I absolutely love long-term thinking and scarcity and strategy. Growing up playing Age of Empires, like, I don't know, that just thinking in systems and I don't know why that comes up to me. I've been listening to Age of Empires. Listening to Age of Empires soundtrack when I work, and it's been piping me up. But I've been thinking about AI and wine and like what I do with my life a lot recently. It's anyone who's chronically online is probably doing the same. And I think there's kind of these two divergent paths people will go on, and it comes down to how well you succeed at financially or appreciate the finer things, which a bit of like, I think that there's I think that the floor of quality of everything is going to increase dramatically. It's like let's take wine, for instance. There's a lot of cheap wine made. And the reason it's cheap is because you're cutting a lot of corners. You're maybe getting crappier grapes and using additives to just manipulating the shit out of bad wine to make wine that's palatable and cheap, because you're getting really cheap inputs. And you can make their inputs even cheaper with robot labor or AI analyzation of test results and monitoring and adding things. And that takes all the art out of it. Like I said, if you like the flavor of that, that's fine. A lot of people just drink wine, but there's a lot of people who also drink wine for the soul, for the connection, for the sense of place, for the connection to the winemaker, to kind of live in if you drink a wine from Italy and you bought that wine because you were in that town in Italy, it takes you back to that place. And so there's wine people will get spiritual about all of that. And I think the quality, basically what I'm saying is the quality of cheap wine, I think, will increase because you can programmatically make it without humans. And it's a chemistry experiment. It's a food science project at that point. And it's not necessarily wine, but if you didn't know that, you might think it's better than crappy wine now, and it might even be cheaper. But did you guys ever read The Man in the High Castle?
Yes.
You know the concept of woo, where it's that connection to the history?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've been thinking about a lot in the world where everything's getting, we talk about people writing with AI, and you're like, oh, I can tell it's AI, I don't like it. And there's this element of oh yeah, it doesn't have soul. And I think that's that concept of woo, or to a degree, where it's that concept to a human, to a soul, to the real world, as opposed to just fabricated by autonomous robots or autonomous thinking. And I think that it will get more expensive, relatively more expensive compared to cheap wine, to drink human produced wine. And there will probably be less human produced wine because the bottom will fall out. If you're not great, you're not going to be worth that extra price people pay.
Yeah.
But in the same way that we see a K-shaped economy right now, where there's people who are crushing it and there's people who are getting wrecked, I think there's going to be people who really appreciate the finer things and the human-made art. I mean, I ask the question all the time, what is art? I don't have a great answer, but there's something deep inside us that kind of knows. But then you're confronted with these different things of okay, well, I didn't know that was AI. It tricked me. It's getting good enough, So we're hitting all these places, these ideas of what it means to be human, what art means, and I think that there's going to be something that people will pay extra for a human touch when it comes to art. Certain people, and wine, like I said, is both science and art. And if you lean more into the art side, to the human side, I think there's going to be a lot of people who pay for that. And I think Bitcoiners increasingly will be able to pay for that. I mean, obviously, but that's a class of people that will be able to pay for the art and probably will appreciate it more, appreciate the finer things, appreciate the connection, and a lot of the things that make wine special. So the question I have really is well, I have an edge because I'm a Bitcoiner and I'm part of the community, and thus feeding my community wine. But eventually everyone's going to be a Bitcoiner. And I think I make great wine, but I'm also at that point, competing with winemakers all around the world. And there's wine regions everywhere. I mean, yeah, it's scarce, as you said, Jody, but there's also a bunch. And there's more grapes grown in the United States than are used to produce wine. So there's a glut. There's more than is needed. So it's something I think about a lot. I'm glad I have Bitcoin. That's my insurance to not lose my job. It's also just really interesting. And I'm competing with AI taking the bottom out, and then I have to be in the top tier of wine producers to be able to maintain once people are buying stuff because they're made by humans. But also that's like, it's probably 10 years out. I'm not super worried about it right now. And as long as I don't go long at the top for a third time, I'll probably be able to hold my stack and be fine.
Yeah.
Let's get started on the Cab.
Cab Sauv, yeah.
So would you say that Cab Sauv is like the most commonly liked type of wine in America?
I wish I had stats for you. That'd be interesting to know. I think that I would probably say that it's that and Pinot are probably the two most popular reds out there. A lot of people have other favorites and that you get into, but can't tell you how many times in selling wine I had a Cab Franc for sale. And Cab Franc is the one of the two parent grapes for Cab Sauv, and they would just see Cab and they're like, "Oh, I love Cab." Like it's a completely different wine.
Yeah.
They had no idea that there were multiple Cabs. So I think it's very well known. People love it, and like I said, there's a specific flavor profile that you typically get from a Cab. So
what's your best seller? Do you have one that's dominant compared to the rest of them, or?
Cab probably is my best seller. I think Pinot is my best wine. It's my favorite. It's what I make from my vineyard, but people know Cab. They're comfortable with it. And it's a little bit cheaper. So it's an easier entry point.
Yeah.
It's
genuinely very good. I'm not just saying that.
Thank you.
This is very
Thank
good.
you. So it's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger tannins, and the fruit is more deeper, more like dark berry. And you get a hint of oak in that Pinot. It kind of comes through because the wine is so light, but there is a little bit more oak in the Cab Sauv. It's just more balanced they're both balanced, but it's the more oak is balanced by the deeper fruit and the more powerful flavor.
This is the punch in your face taste.
This one, yeah.
Americans look for it. Right?
Of my wines, yeah, but I make a lighter Cab as well.
Yeah.
I make lighter wines. Generally, that's just kind of what I'm realizing is my winemaking style. And yeah, if a Cab drinker like a full on, like I drink California Cabs, this is very different than what they are probably used to. They want really punchy in the face. A lot of times thick tannins, a lot of times more oak. And that's just not really both. It's my winemaking style, but I think my winemaking style is influenced by the grapes I buy and grow. In Colorado, you're at high elevation, so it changes the ripening pattern, changes the flavor, and you get thicker skins and a slower ripening time. And so the flavors can really develop, but they also get higher acid and brighter fruit. So you get more fruit forward wines than you would in a different environment, and higher acid. So I'm always watching the acid to not be too high because you don't want to be like crazy on that balance. But at the same time, like they're always going to be somewhat juicy and really like you can tell it's acidic when you're drinking wine, when it's like nice, kind of electric feeling in your mouth. And when your taste buds feel like they're firing. Or sorry, when your saliva glands feel like they're firing. So it's, you're gonna like, I just love, honestly, I just love drinking this Cab Sauv with cheese.
How many grapes go into a bottle?
That's
like, just generally, I don't know.
So I don't like one at a time pluck off grapes.
No, of course. But like generally, has anyone ever done that? Like that math?
Yeah, dude. Google right now.
Nice. And does the fact that it's lighter mean there's less alcohol, or?
Not necessarily. So it looks like 600 to 800 individual grapes, 10 clusters into a 8 to 12 clusters of grapes go into a bottle. What do you say, the power?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you have lighter wines, does that mean they're lower alcohol content or something different?
Not necessarily. A lot of it's like I said, varietal. So Pinots are a little bit more delicate than Cabs, and that's just the grapes are different. And soil is a huge part of it as well. Being in alluvial soil creates lighter wines. If you're in like clay soils, you're just going to get like a real punchy wine. I think when I've done tastings throughout the world, whenever I hear something's in granite soil, I really light up because that creates some awesome fruit in it. And being my palate is influenced by what I drink, and what I drink is a lot of times mine, or wine from around here. And I really love the nice balanced fruit. And I just find in the rest of the world, since they're not all growing at altitude, I mean, I get fruit a lot of times from my altitude, not necessarily my soil. This whole wine thing is infinitely complex, but a lot of times in the rest of the world, you're growing at lower elevation, so you're not getting that altitude fruit boost, and you're making wine that's like a little bit more earthy. Like if you ever heard people say like, this tastes like a leather saddle.
Never heard that.
Yeah.
Like you lick some leather. That's like if you're drinking a Bordeaux or some like really deep, big wine, a lot of times it tastes earthy. Tobacco, leather is our common flavor points, and that's just like, that's great. I'll enjoy a glass, but it's not really my style. I like to taste the grape.
For your style and like for our audience, what cheese are you grabbing to go with the Cab Sav? Manchego, you grabbing like?
Yeah, I mean, Manchego is kind of I'm just a guilty pleasure of mine. That, or I mean, you could go a Gouda, Brie, awesome. I mean, you have a lot of flexibility. I mean, like when I say, yeah, I like it with cheese, like, like wine with cheese, nice. But specifically, I do just kind of crave slices of cheese, maybe some sausage or something as well when I'm drinking the Cab Sav.
And what's your operation size? Is it just you out there, you and your dad? Do you have a team when you need a harvest? What's it look like?
So it's basically just me. I have part-time help for the vineyard during the summer and in the spring, and then during winemaking season. So I guess that's like 2/3 of the year. I've got help part-time, and winemaking, like that. When I talk about winemaking, what I'm talking about is like those intense 2 weeks from harvest to barreling. That's like, I mean, I guess with my new machine, it's a little bit easier, but that's hard labor. That's a hard day of work. And when you start it, you have to finish. So they end up being long. Sometimes, that time of year, it's getting dark early. So you're really pushing, and it's a little cold, but yeah, that's my system. And then since I'm selling everything online, I'm not like I used to be doing 12-hour days, driving to farmers markets and selling in person. And, eventually my online presence, I guess, got big enough that I didn't have to do that. And that was all selling to non-Bitcoiners. And I started going a little bit insane, answering the same questions over and over and over and over. And so being part of the Bitcoin community, establishing myself, people know me. I'm happy to answer the same questions. That's kind of just that's what I signed up for. But whenever you're interacting with someone, there's a little bit more like, okay, I know who you are, or I know a little bit. And when you're, in a crowd of people coming up to you for the first time, they're like, who the fuck are you? And why should I buy your wine? And, that's business, that's the game. But being part of a community of people and making wine for them is a lot more rewarding than just getting sales.
I think a lot of Bitcoiners, like I personally want to support you. The wine is actually phenomenal though. But it does feel like you were talking about the woo feeling. It's like the thing I was thinking of was like real diamonds versus these synthetic ones. Like gemologists can't even tell the difference now oftentimes, but
your girlfriend
person knows they feel good about having, the real thing. This is good. It's interesting.
So just for audience as well, they're asking for the code. We always do a stack giveaway on Fridays. 21race.com/stack. The code is Peony Lane, or Peony Lane, in all caps. log in. You can enter the code. You'll enter the SAC giveaway. There's also a Rhino spin wheel. That's a ton of fun. There's actually some new stuff coming out with Rhino that we're excited to announce. But yeah, let's get sats flowing, circular economy. Use those sats maybe to go buy some Peony Lane wine.
Yes.
What's the etymology behind the name? Where'd that come from?
My dad named the winery Peony Lane. My town's called Peonia, and that's a bastardization of the Latin spelling of peony. As I said earlier, the town was famous for growing peonies. It was the Valley of Peonies. And my street is the old main street of town. So we just named it that. My dad did a long time ago, and I, in an ode to him, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him doing that and getting me started and loaning me the money to start a winery as well. And I guess I like the name. I don't know.
Great Beatles song too.
Yeah, dude, I get that all the time.
Anyway.
Yeah. The people, I get these
the dad jokes.
I get dads, and then I get a bunch of boomers being like, "Oh, Penny Lane, nice." I don't want to. I don't want my first interaction to be like, "No, wrong," but also no.
And how many bottles are you cranking out a season?
So I'm kind of like, what I did to start out is I just produced wine. I just made more and more every year, because it's going to take me 2 years to catch up to production every time I want to scale up, and I had no idea how big I want to get. And so this past year I hit my limit as far as storage goes, and I could have expanded, but decided not to. So I think I'm going to be around maybe 500 cases a year, and that's 5,000 bottles ish, 6,000 bottles. And we'll see this 2026 vintage. I'm moving strictly, as of now, I'm moving strictly to estate fruit. So just from my vineyard, we have a new vineyard coming online. So we planted in 2020, but because farming, you never know, we just had hard frosts and the hardest time getting it going. So here we are 6 years later, kind of hoping for our first half crop from it. That's people ask me why don't you just plant a ton of vines and expand? It's well, because I'm a Bitcoiner and I'm never going to be able to get that return on capital. If I spend Bitcoin on this, I guess I could get a loan, but all my assets are in Bitcoin, and the bank doesn't like that for getting loan purposes. So it takes, when you're planting a new vineyard, it takes if everything goes well, 4 or 5 years to get your first crop, and then another 2 years to make the red wine. So you're looking at 6, 7, 8 years before you get any return on capital. And then you're a young vineyard, so people don't take that wine seriously, and it's legitimately not as good. You want root systems that are fully established and deep into the ground to really get the nuance and flavor. So it's I don't know. I guess I'm glad that we planted that new vineyard before I found Bitcoin. I'm glad my dad planted it 20 years ago, because in a Bitcoin world, I mean, unless you take a loan on your Bitcoin or something and fund it that way, in which case, you have enough money, you're going to be fine. Whatever you do, and you should be seeking happiness at that point. Maybe wine brings you happiness. It's it will make sense in a Bitcoin world to plant grapes, but in a world where Bitcoin is monetizing and moving more quickly, then it's kind of insane to make a 6 to 8 year investment to just start getting returns at that point, when it's not it's one thing to get a huge capital payoff, but to just start getting the residual income from grape production, it's doesn't make sense.
It's not like venture capital. And I think as well, though, Grant Cardone was on, I think 2 weeks ago on the Friday Stack. And then he was talking about focus on cash flow. If you're young, if you're starting out, you're 22, don't just buy Bitcoin and sit. You're going to buy a tenth of a Bitcoin and expect to retire on that. That's not realistic for the world. That's not going to expand Bitcoiners as a whole. I think too many whales are saying, this is what I do because I'm putting in 5 million of capital Bitcoin. Great. You're fine. You're going to do well. But Gen Z, they need to actually look at cash flowing businesses. Maybe it's a winery. Maybe you go intern for Ben.
Real quick, Rob, if he was going to take a loan, where would you suggest?
Well, then I would highly suggest he heads over to Arch. Let me tell you about Arch. It's the world-leading destination for Bitcoin-backed loans. Arch provides world-class security and white glove service so you never have to sell your Bitcoin. If you're listening to this, you did the hard part, but you stacked, you held, you didn't panic sell when we crashed, but real life still happens. Say you want to start a business, say you want to buy a house, and selling Bitcoin to get cash feels wrong. That's where Arch comes in. Think of it like a flexible line of credit with rates starting as low as 8.5% APR. You borrow what you need, repay anytime, and only pay interest on what you use, all without triggering a tax event. The best part, the Bitcoin stays yours. Arch has a strict no rehypothecation policy, so your collateral is never lent out. It's held in qualified, insured, bankruptcy remote custody with full transparency. Get your cash today at archlending.com. That's archlending.com/daily stack.
1% off.
1% off if you use daily stack.
I got you, Ben.
So yeah, if you need to talk about Bitcoin loans, talk to our boys at Arch. They know what's going on.
That future of, like, we think about the way that, I guess, rich people in the fiat world have survived of loaning against their properties, loaning against their assets, and then just living off of the loan proceeds and continually refinancing because things go up. That's super attractive. Like, self-custody, like, you want to self-custody as much as possible, but like, that's a super attractive way to take advantage of the two systems. And it's cool seeing the infrastructure get built out. I know kind of last cycle was a big test for that. And I'm glad I didn't get burned then. Hopefully it's matured. Hopefully it's better. But what I found really interesting is I got my cousin into Bitcoin. Quick story at the end here. I got my cousin into Bitcoin, and he's in the marijuana business. And so he's just completely blackballed by banks and like wrecked by regulation. And they don't treat him well. Choke point 1.0 is still very alive. As much as we like to think about choke point 2.0, they're still coming for marijuana growers. And he got sucked into Bitcoin when I went and visited on a family trip. And I talked to him this year on the family trip, a year after getting into Bitcoin. And I thought like sales would be big, you know, like what I've done is valuable. But, you know, he can't ship all over. He's more localized. So, you know, wherever you are, is the concentration of Bitcoiners is small, and you can really only benefit from the larger community by being part of the larger community and not niching down into a specific location. But he said that the biggest benefit for him is he has been unable to play the real estate game for years, where he was able like to take leverage to be able to like grow that way. Because banks won't loan to him at all because they ask where his money's coming from. And so the biggest benefit he got from Bitcoin was these Bitcoin backed loans. It was the first time he's been able to use capital that he has, get a line against it and invest in more capital, or invest in more expenses, invest back in his business. And, you know, it's very clear about his responsible approach to doing it. He understands that. But I was very surprised at like how much of a door that being in Bitcoin, but that specific part of Bitcoin financial services has opened for him, as someone who's been blackballed by the financial industry.
Yeah, well, we have one more to taste today before we go.
How many, so we have 3. How many different types of wines do you have?
So I made a bunch of different wines in 2021, and we're drinking one 2021. That's this Malbec. And so I've got maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 wines on my site. Some of them are super limited, so they are priced super high for normal people, because it's just like I have like 100 bottles left, and I'm in no rush to sell these. But for club members, they are priced at the initial release price, so that's about 50% off of that. So if you count all those, it's probably like 8 to 10.
I'll let you show the club, because I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, my club is 3 times a year. So Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, and Mother's Day, I make sure you're covered, get your wine in case you get a gift or something, or need a lot of dudes in my wine club. So I got your back. But it's 6 bottles 3 times a year. And if you ever need to skip or anything, that's totally fine. But I pick out 6 bottles that I think are drinking really well, good for the season, or new things you should try, old ones that are about to run out that I think you should get before they run out. You're welcome to totally customize. It's all flexible, but I'm given that bit of suggestions ahead of time. And it's just a way to make sure that you are always all stocked up on wine and ready to go, and covered for especially those big life events. Because if the thing I'm most passionate in wine is the conversations you get, the connections, the connection with your food, whatever it is, like not everyone, drinking's not for everyone. I get it. It's dangerous. You have to have your balance, but if you can do it with balance, I think wine is probably the best multiplier effect for the most situations, given how well it goes with food, not to mention just the social lubricant. And so I want you to enjoy my wine in those scenarios. That's like, that's my favorite thing is the conversations, the meals, the time spent with people over a glass of wine. And so I'm just trying to make sure people have wine at those times. And
what's making this, I'm tasting, and I don't drink Malbec ever, but I'm feeling like on the sides of my tongue, like a little, it's not bubbly, but I'm feeling like almost like a bubbly sensation.
So
what's that? Yeah.
A lot of times that's just kind of what you had in your mouth beforehand. And I know you're drinking other wines. I don't know what it could be. There's definitely no effervescence in this wine, but it could be just the tannins feeling stronger. This one has the grippiest tannins of the three. Definitely the most, like if you take a sip of something and then your mouth feels kind of dry, that's the result of tannins. So this one, that mouth feel is the term to describe it. This one is like the most grippy, the most, the heaviest tannins for sure.
So one anecdote I've heard is for Malbecs themselves, you can find at a lower price point a pretty solid Malbec. Like it's going into a grocery store you've never been into, you're traveling. They say, hey, like grab a Malbec. It's probably going to be okay. How do you approach it versus Cab Sav or the Pinot Noir? Like when you're telling people why you should drink a Malbec.
This one of the three, just because it's got that higher tannins, I think the fruit profile is really nice and a bit of acid to go with the fat. This is the one that I'm breaking out with a steak. So if you're going to Brazilian steakhouse, I know it's an Argentinian variety, but this is the biggest, most powerful one of my wines that I have. So if you're going for a steak, this is where I'm going for. Typically, when people are asking me what to drink outside of like my wine specifically, they're just looking for advice. And I understand, like, if you drink all the same wine, that's boring too. Drink some variety. I appreciate people liking my wine, and you can have a favorite, but drink a bunch of wines. And so what I find is when I drink other American wines, generally, I feel horrible afterwards. I get a headache. I get sometimes I got like weird hot flashes. I thought I was like having menopause. But I just feel kind of gross afterwards. And a lot of people experience that. There's definitely a segment of people who just get headaches from red wine and have to stop. But I find that if I'm drinking my wine or other low intervention winemakers wine, which is a little bit harder to find in the United States, or generally I tell people to buy French or Italian wine. And honestly, I know a little bit less about South American wine and their history of winemaking as far as additives generally used. And I find that it's all connected to the money, man. The American wine scene didn't really come on until the early 70s when there's a movie called Bottle Shock where a California wine basically won Best in Show for the entire world. And it was thought that no New World wines, as they're called, could ever beat the Old World wines, the European wines. And so once that happened, the American wine scene really took off. And being in California, one of the big beneficiaries of the fiat world, just being on the coast, and completely coming of age within the world of fiat monetary policy, you kind of see the effects in the wine. There's a lot more. There's not connection to this rich 1,000-year-old history of winemakers and the farms and the food and all that. And they have obviously have fiat money too there, but they have that rich cultural connection. And so it's kind of led to less of a bastardization of their wine industry, and it's definitely more connection to the land, to the farmer, to the terroir, and less additives generally used. And that's very much generalization, but that is what I find, where the United States wine scene was built in the fiat world, built for fast profit, built for American wine drinkers who care about getting punched in the face with flavor, and care about a specific flavor that they like and they don't want to change. They care less about art, I think. So, when I first started the winery, I didn't have any sales for the winter. I was sold out. And so I went to go work in a French restaurant to make money. And I'd always thought the French people were just like pompous and assholes. And first little bit of being in the French restaurant, I definitely still thought that. And then the longer I was there, I was like, man, they still are like stereotypically pompous assholes, but they're right. And I get it.
They care more.
Well, Bitcoin's the same way. You have your predators, you have your hot on the do's, but then you appreciate what they provide to the community as a detractor. Sometimes a lot of times you disagree with them and the attitude they have, but it's you got to keep people honest, and so you appreciate it over time. Totally agree.
One thing I was going to say is I don't know if there's sulfates in here, but I know that I have asthma, and sometimes if I have like heavy sulfates, that will like trigger like some flare up, and I'll be on a cup or two of wine or a glass of wine, and I'll need to take my inhaler, and like I don't feel any of that right now. So I don't know if you guys do have them, or maybe less than most.
Do you ever get that feeling from like dried fruit? Do you eat that much?
I don't eat
enough
dried fruit.
The reason I ask is just like, sulfites are
natural, or?
The naturally occurring, but in smaller amounts, and they're definitely overused in the wine industry. But it is the stereotype for, does this wine have high sulfites? This makes me feel bad. And I honestly, the science isn't really there to support that. And a very small amount of people have sulfite sensitivity, and you might, like, especially hearing about the asthma, like you might legitimately have that. And my wines are low sulfites. I add a tiny bit right before bottling to make sure it's shelf stable. I'm shipping all over the country. I can't really afford to do that without a little bit of stabilization in there. But what I'm using is like so far below what is typically used, and especially the limits, which are usually pushed. But it's what people know. People have heard about it because it's the only thing on a wine label contains sulfites. It's the only ingredient. Whereas, so people assume that it's like, wine is just grapes, right? Well, no, there's 73 ingredients you can use without putting anything on the ingredients label. And it could be any one of those that's giving you a problem. And some of those are, innocuous. It's like you can use egg whites to change the flavor of the wine, and none of that actually stays in the wine. But then you can add just chemicals to change the acid profile, to change the taste, change the texture, change the aroma, the flavor. And you're never going to have any idea what that is, because like realistically, you're never going to like do a controlled test of all these different wine ingredients. And even if you did, 99% of the wine you drink, outside of like meeting me or drinking my wine or whatever, like you're not going to, if you go to a store, you're not going to be able to ask that winemaker from a liquor, like he's not there at the liquor store. You're not gonna be able to ask him exactly what's in that wine. And so you're never gonna have any clarity. And, I'm not in favor of like regulation coming down and forcing, anyone to start putting all these ingredients on their wine. I guess, there'd be some benefits, but the negative consequences would be pushing people like me a little bit further out, because it'd be more expensive to deal with that regulation, harder for me to survive. So I'm just very much like, listen to your body. If you feel bad about drinking a wine, don't drink that one again, and kind of recognize what it is, what that wine is, and look for other wines similar to it to avoid. And if you really don't know, if you like, meet your winemaker is the number one thing. And if you can't do that, look for low intervention wines. And if you can't find those, just buy French or Italian, is probably the most common. Because like, wine's meant for enjoying, like drink to enhance your life, not to escape it. You're drinking to enhance you're drinking to enhance these great moments, and you don't want them tainted by feeling like crap the next day or feeling like crap while you're drinking it. And, a lot of people just associate that with wine, but there's so much nuance, but there's so much it's such a black box in so many ways, and it's really hard to actually know what you're drinking.
What are you eating with Malbec?
What's that?
What are you eating with the Malbec? You know,
That's a steak. That's a steak for sure.
Cheese you go with?
What's that?
Do you have a cheese?
My boy loves cheese over here. He wants to.
I mean, I think with the higher tannins, you can go with a little bit more of a stinky cheese. So, I mean, I'm coming back to brie on that. Is going to be really nice. Anything creamy as well. The bigger the wine, the bigger the food. And so when you're going, like, if you're having the Pinot with cheese, because I mean, realistically, like, what are we doing? All wine goes well with cheese. But when you're having the Pinot with cheese, you want a little bit more mild. And when you have these bigger wines, like this Malbec being the biggest one, you can go a little bit crazier, a little bit more stinky, a little bit more aged, whatever it is. And it's going to hold up next to it, because you want to be finding the balance, and you want to be finding these flavors that play off each other. And so size matches size. So like the Pinot, like, you know, I have it with steak because it's my favorite wine, but I only have it with steak because it's my favorite wine and I have unlimited supply of it. Whereas, like, you know, go for it. It's not bad. Like, it's not a bad pairing, and they're both great things, but it's not necessarily like feeding off each other to create this like beautiful symbiotic thing. If you had a wine that was bigger and you like just as much, it would be even greater.
Any plans? I don't know if you guys have white wine. Any plans to ever expand into white wine at all, or?
So with this new Pinot vineyard, I'm looking to do a rosé out of it. And so to back up, be like, okay, so what is white wine versus red wine? It's obviously the grapes, but it's also the winemaking process, where red wine, the juice is actually clear from red grapes. It's the skins that give it the color. So it's when you ferment for 2 weeks on the skins, that's where it gets the color. That's where it gets a lot of the tannins and everything. And so rosé is just wine from red grapes made in the style of white wine, where you press the juice off the grape skins as quick as possible so they get as little color as possible. So in that sense, yes. But as far as my production goes and in growing it, I am much more interested in red wine, and Pinot Noir is the grape that I think grows the best and is the most economical, as far as like, white wine doesn't command as much value as red wine. And I'm also interested kind of in the time preference of it and aging wine. And that's just leans more red. And we have Pinot. And like I said, I'm not going to plant another vineyard. So, or at least until I can get a Bitcoin backed loan on 1 million sats and plant an entire vineyard. Then we'll see. But yeah, so for my own personal production, I'm leaning more and more and more towards just producing grapes from my vineyard. That's all Pinot, and that probably will be all Pinot for the foreseeable future.
This is awesome. Yeah, dude. Cheers. Well, we went through our 3 wines and we tasted them all. We got your story, and there's just so much that goes into your day-to-day business. It's
what was your favorite, Rob?
I'm a cab guy, but I was very impressed by the Pinot. Yeah,
I like the Pinot.
It's super light. You can see through it. You know, I'm not used to that drinking a cab. Usually, it's
the Malbec grew on me though. The first sip was just very different than the other ones, and then I was like, okay, I'm like easing my way into this now. I like it.
It's funny how different it always is, because, like I said, the Pinot is usually my favorite, but I don't usually drink at 10:30 in the morning local time. So today the Malbec was my favorite, and you shift over time. And a lot of times I make an opinion on a wine I made, and I'm like, I'll only drink this for this specific reason. It's not my favorite fruit profile. Like, it's good wine, but I just don't like that variety as much or whatever. And then I have one randomly. I'm like, whoa, that was really good. And so it kind of hits you at different times. The wine's aging, the wine's changing, but also like, you really like the wine tastes different every single time you drink it. It's your environment. It's what you're doing. It's the people you're with, the mood you're in, the glass you drink out of. It's everything can change. And so you want to find wine that you like, but you can make wine taste better by being happy with your friends. And ultimately when it comes down to, like, if you're distilling it down to that, then what really matters is how you feel afterwards. So you want to try and find wine that you enjoy, situations you enjoy, and wine that that leaves you feeling clean. And I think what you'll find is, we're all drinking kind of midday right now. If you got a little buzz, this is like, it's one thing to wake up and not feel hungover, but I think the thing I notice the most with my wine is if you drink during the day and you're awake as you come down from that buzz, you feel clean afterwards. You don't feel like kind of that gross grogginess. It's just kind of a much more smooth transition out of it.
Love it.
Yeah.
You just heard it from the man himself. You can day drink on this stuff and be good for the night.
Encourage it, actually. Well, yeah, thanks for coming, man. This is phenomenal. Jodes, send us home.
We're going to send you home. I'm going to call my favorite the Malbec, because in Oregon, there's a lot of like Willamette Valley Pinot Noirs, which my sister loves in Atlanta, actually. I don't know how she got on them, but she loves Willamette Valley Pinot Noirs. So surprising them with a Malbec curveball, I think, is going to be the play for my dinners. Ben, it's been a pleasure. We appreciate your honesty. I think in the community, we loved it. Like your voices on the Daily Stack. We don't want to make this a top down. Hey, I have 100 Bitcoin. I'm going to speak down to you on how you do your personal finances. We're going to do more bottom up. We want the community out there talking about good decisions, bad decisions, and how we can, get better and preserve value going forward. Also love the long-term thinking with your own business. I think it's amazing. And I do think scarcity is there. It's the same mindset. Let's think long-term. Let's do scarce things that are going to be valuable in the future. So everyone, 21race.com/stack, code Peony Lane. That is where you're going to be able to enter the giveaway. Also check
Follow
out.
Ben.
What's up?
I was just saying, make sure to follow Peony Lane and follow Ben on Twitter. Go buy some. Genuinely, it was some of the best wine I've ever had. So truly, it was great.
Amazing. Thank you, Ben.
All right. Taking you guys into the weekend. I hope you enjoy that. Until next Monday, this has been the Daily Stack.